The rest of the meeting should take 10 minutes.
Shouldn't take long. No?
Don't speak too loud.
Right, Alistair, please. Welcome, Ross.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'll try to be brief. The Auckland Regional Amenities Funding Board each year puts out a draft funding plan which sets out the level of funding they want to provide to each of the 9 amenities. Auckland Council, like the rest of the public, gets to put in a submission on that draft funding plan. Slightly inconveniently this year, the funding plan will be published on the 11th of January and submissions close on the 11th of February. Normally this committee signs off Council's submission, but there will be no committee meetings over that time frame, so we're simply asking for a delegation to the chair of this committee or the deputy chair of this committee to sign off Council's submission.
Move.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move.
Moved, seconded. No discussion.
By who?
Put the motion. Moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by Councillor Filipana. Put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Whoosh. That was better than the previous one.
I was going to ask for a bit more time. Joke.
Right. Ross. What a great name. What a great name. Welcome. Update on Rawene landslide. Okay. And
Good afternoon.
We're then going to confidential, so this is just a, sorry, later, so this is an update in open session. Look, Ross.
We have a short presentation for you here. What I'll do with this presentation is just take you briefly through the background so that we remind you. Sorry.
The clicker.
Thank you very much. I'll take you briefly through the background so that you get reminded of what's happened at the site and explain where we're going next with this project. So, in October 2017, the car park around the back of the Makoia Ridge shops failed. This was a site that had been infilled in the mid-20th century, and the resulting landslide was quite significant. Auckland Transport immediately went in and fenced off the site and made it safe, but about 30 car parking spaces were lost, and the debris moved a long way down the slope. So as you can see in this aerial photograph of the site, the extent shown there is less than half the full length of the landslide. But the important thing to note there is the proximity of the buildings at the crest. So over Christmas 2017, we got involved and it started putting sheet piles in around the top of the slope to give a temporary stabilisation to keep the buildings safe. And this shows the work ongoing in January. So as you can see, this project's taken a little while to go through. It is a complicated and difficult task to get this sort of work done, so it's not something that we can do in a hurry. The sheet piles have given us temporary stability for the slope. They've made the buildings at the crest safe, and they've helped restore some confidence to the local population. The sheet piles themselves are 12 to 18 metres long, so although you can see the sheet piles in the background of the photograph there, sticking out a short distance, they're actually about twice the height of the buildings you can see, so well and truly buried into that slope. So moving through the year, in June, this shows the sheet piles cut off and a capping beam constructed around the top, and the slope starting to be reshaped. We've diverted surface water and we've pumped water out of the slope. The groundwater has been reduced as well, all to give temporary stability to the slope. So this all forms part of the temporary stability of the slope, making it safe for the surrounding buildings, but it doesn't give us a long-term result. Now this is a, hopefully, short time-lapse video showing the work in the second half of the year, reshaping the slope. We've had temporary access constructed, working our way down through the landslide debris, taking it to a safe angle and building a working platform at the toe. It's been undertaken very successfully. The work so far has been built on time and on budget, and we'll be talking to you later about the next stages. So that was phase one. Phase one is now complete. The next stages are phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2 outlined in yellow. I'll talk you through the design on the very last slide, so that's coming up at the end. And phase 3 is further down the gully, where we get into an area of old bushland, which will have a different result. And this is a breakdown of where we've got to. So going back to our first slide, you saw the emergency works, the sheet piles going in. That was the first piece of work we did over the Christmas period. That's complete. Phase 1 has been this year. So temporary works to stabilise the slope, to drain the slope and to reshape it. That is now complete. And it also, during that time, we've got through the design and consenting of phase 2, which is the permanent stabilisation of the slope. So it's important to differentiate between the permanent works and the temporary works. So we now have a design complete for that permanent works, and we're ready to start on that early in the new year. That should take us until May 2019 to complete. And finally, there's phase 3, which was the bottom half that you saw in the previous slide. That covers the flatter land at the toe, and the design for that has not yet been commenced. And that will depend very much on liaison with local landowners, because it covers private land as well as public land. And finally, this is a slide to show how the slope ends up looking. I'm not expecting you to read the text on this slide. I'm just going to talk through some of the details. So the pink at the bottom is the existing rock, and the dotted line following that rock is the surface as it was immediately after the landslide. What we're doing with our design here is we've reshaped the slope to create a working platform, and then you can see the vertical line near the bottom of the slope. They are a set of piles that will go in to stabilise the toe of the slope. They're the next thing to be built from January onwards, and then once that's built, we'll be building back up the slope with imported fill to stabilise it. You'll see there's a lower level at the top with flat ground. That's going to be a reinstated car park to replace the car parking spaces that were lost in the original landslide. Behind that's a small retaining wall, and the previous access road that was behind that will be reinstated as well. So we end up with a situation that's quite similar to what was there before the slide. The slope over the top of that will be reinstated with native vegetation. And what's not shown on this is phase 3, which is further down the slope. As I stated before, that will depend a lot on negotiations with the private landowners, so exactly how that will be dealt with. But we anticipate that it will likely be restored to native bush. So that was a very quick summary of progress so far.
Right, councillors, we're going into confidential later on the item. Probably best to hold all questions. Please don't ask any questions about phase 3. Councillor Cook.
One question. Thank you. It's obviously very complex. When you say permanent reinstatement, what's the guarantees that this is any more permanent than before?
Through the chair, the difference between the new slope and the old slope is that the new slope has been designed in accordance with modern engineering standards. The old slope was not designed at all. It was tipped.
A dump.
It was a dump, yeah. So there was no design that we're aware of undertaken on that, and the stability would always have been significantly less than we would normally have. So the new slope has the same sort of factor of safety that you would accept if you were putting a building directly on top of it.
Thank you.
I'll move.
Right, moved. Seconded. Right. No further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Chair,
Against?
sorry,
Oh, sorry, I thought you seconded.
just for the public record, I guess, just to thank Ross and the team for what in the last year or so has been a phenomenally difficult and intense and often dangerous effort for the contractors, especially the business owners, the landowners, everyone involved. It's highly complex, and the emergency works especially were done, things were changing within days. There was plant that got swallowed up by other slips. People were, literally risking their lives to try and protect the town centre and protect what was going on. And Ross and the team, like the professional and complicated work and the way it's been actually put out to the public and the business owners and the very upset people all around Birkenhead of what potentially could have happened. is quite a big deal. So thank you on behalf of myself and Chris and the local board and the businesses and residents. I know there was a lot of anger, but actually people were very happy once they understood everything line by line. Yeah, so just wanted that for before we go into confidential.
And I'll let Anne also to speak.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, I have spoken to our chair. Unfortunately, he just couldn't make it at the last minute, so he's asked me to fill in for him, so I do have permission to speak on his behalf. But I'd also like to reiterate what Richard's just said. It's been a very, very difficult time. And we've had the most amazing contractors, I think, and they've done everything they could to move this along. It's not really move it along. Sorry. But we certainly do appreciate the council's direction on this and the way that they've carried out the whole thing.
And you're going to speak in confidential. Yeah. Well, good, and loved that little movie. That was good. That was great. Councillor Darby, you wanted to just say something. A little bit unusual doing this afterwards, but it's cool.
No, look, it's. I'm saying this in open. Ross, I want to acknowledge your incredible work on behalf of the board and the whole council. I've been on site there a few times with you. This is a very testy situation. You've been remarkable, mate. Absolutely remarkable. You are a highly skilled, really talented technical expert in your field. And the first time I went on site and I heard you basically outline the issue, and it was coming at you. Everybody was coming at you thick and fast. How you've handled yourself and represented the council at some very testy meetings has been incredible. And I'm really grateful that you are at the helm of it. And I say that straight and honestly to you. Thank you.
Okay, so we've put the motion, it's passed, so thank you. We've got one more item, which I think we can just take as read, so I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Simpson, which is item 11. Noted. Put the motion, all those in favour? Okay, against, no one presumably. And the procedural motion, it's on the screen. I'll not be reading it because you can all read.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move that.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Collins. All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, so clear the room, please. Lock the gates.
Oh,
Okay.